This is Butterfly, the Becoming. Here, I tell stories that shape me, stories of love, struggle, silence, and survival. Stories that carry pain but also hold healing. And today, I want to bring you into the life of my grandmother. Because when I think of love in its purest form, I think of strength wrapped in silence and of beauty woven into hardship. I think of my grandmother. The purest love I ever knew as a child came from my grandparents. When I was with them, I was free. Their love wasn't complicated, it wasn't conditional, it was safe. They were hardworking people who left the Carolinas chasing a better life. Somehow, they managed to buy a house. Not just a house, it was their home. My grandmother put her personal touches on everything. She had the garage closed in and turned into a family room. She sewed these beautiful white sheer flowing curtains and hung them to match her white furniture. She even made her own pillows out of red velvet. Those pillows stood out. They were so bold, soft, and rich. That was the way my grandmother was. She loved making something beautiful out of her struggle. As a child, I would sit in that room and it felt like I was sitting in her love. It felt like home. It felt like my grandmother. But beauty did not erase the struggles. Life was not easy for them. My grandfather was injured and could not work, not the way he used to. And with that loss came the weight, the disappointment, and the drinking. He would drive his old truck around town looking for resellable metals or items people would put to the curb, just enough to buy a bottle of alcohol. The kids in the neighborhood would make fun of him sometimes. I remember feeling that I had to protect him, but I also knew they didn't really understand what he was carrying. But I knew in my heart they really didn't mean any harm. They liked my grandfather, but they did make fun of him. But it was okay. I grew up thinking that my grandfather was my best friend. Oh, he was my ride or die. Sometimes he would let me ride around with him, and my grandmother didn't really know because granddad was responsible for making sure I was okay when grandma was working. He loved, even though he was hurting. He just did not know what to do with the weight he carried inside. My grandparents had three boys. My father and uncle both left and went north, searching for better opportunities. And my grandmother, she was the glue. She was the matriarch. She cleaned houses for white families to bring in money. That's the only opportunity she really had back then. But she made other opportunities available. She was smart, she was wise, and she did what needed to be done in order to keep her family together. She would sew clothes for the neighbors, adults, and children with no pattern, just fabric. She would take their measurements and use her pure skill and make all of these beautiful clothes. I could still hear that sewing machine buzzing late into those hot summer nights. After working during the day, she would work all night. It was the sound of her making a way out of no way. And still, when the money was still not enough for her, she would bake cakes from scratch to sell, make frozen cups out of sweet pineapple juice mixed with Kool-Aid and poured into Dixie cups. She charged 5 cents each. That 5 cents kept the lights on. Every penny mattered. She was also at the church, always in charge of the kitchen, cooking for events, fried chicken, baking cakes. Everyone remembered. If you would talk to the neighbors in the community, what they would remember about my grandmother the most was her food, her cakes, her presence. She just never stopped moving. She never stopped giving. Their home was always full of people, someone always stopping by or calling to say hello. Grandma, she loved children and people, and they loved her back. It was a vibrant house full of life, even in the middle of hardship. When her second born son died from alcoholism, I watched her keep going like nothing had happened. I never saw my grandmother cry. She never spoke a word about it. She just carried that heartbreak inside. And when my grandfather, drinking, eventually killed him too, that one crushed me. I was living up north. I did not make it to the hospital in time. By the time I saw my grandfather, he was already in the casket. I lost control. I could not stop crying. The grief, the regret that I did not get to say goodbye while he was still here. It stayed with me for many years. But my grandmother, she did not cry. She did not say a word. Then her baby boy, the youngest son, died. The doctor said it was alcohol that killed him, but I believe it was more. My uncle had went to Vietnam and he was exposed to chemicals there. His body was never the same, but he never told anyone how sick he was. And again, my grandmother did not cry. She did not complain. She did not break. She carried all that pain in silence. I wonder how many of us are carrying heartbreak that no one ever sees, keeping it tucked away because stopping to feel it might mean we don't survive it. For years, I asked myself, how? How did my grandmother lose her husband and two sons and keep standing? As a child, I could not understand it. But when I became a mother, I began to see it differently. Her silence was not because she did not feel. Her silence was survival. She did not have permission to fall apart. If she stopped moving, cleaning, sewing, cooking, selling, everything would collapse. So she swallowed her tears, carried heartache in her body, in her bones, in her silence. I don't know where she stored all that pain, but I know it lived in her. And me, I became the one who cried the tears she never released. Here's what I know: her silence was life, it was not weakness. It was the only way she knew to keep going. Survival and healing are not the same. I honor my grandmother's strength and resilience, but I also honor the cost. I will not glorify her suffering. I see the way she carried, and I cry for her. That's my healing. That's the release, to let go of what she never could. And even with all she carried, she was full of life. She was sweet, she was sassy, and she was fancy. She loved clothes. She loved hats, and she just loved looking good. She made her own clothes at that sewing machine. She even made her hats. But one thing about my grandmother, she never let life take her style or pride. When I moved up north, every Wednesday, I called my grandmother. I just needed to hear her voice. Every time it reminded me I was loved. No matter what was happening in my life, her voice was my anchor. You know, isn't it something how just one person voice can steady you? My grandmother lived to be 99 years old. All of the family on my grandmother's side, they lived to be in their late 90s and over 100. My great-grandmother, her mother, some say she was 102 to 104 when she died. But even at 99 years old, my grandmother's mind was sharp. Her memory was intact. Even her conversation was clear, like it was no stuttering, no, she remembered more than I did, but her body started to slow, but her spirit never did. She had a great sense of humor. She was the blueprint. She never lost her shine. Grandma showed me what resilience looks like. But here's the difference between her and me. She carried her pain in silence. I choose to speak mine. I carry her strength, creativity, and her love. I release the silence by crying the tears she could not and by telling the truth, her truth. That is my healing. That is the legacy she left me. And maybe that's what healing really is, deciding which parts of the blueprint we carry on and which parts we finally lay down or let go. This is Butterfly, the becoming. It is about looking back at the people who raised us, who loved, who sacrificed for us, and telling the truth about their lives. It's about giving ourselves the freedom they never had. It's about carrying forward their strength and releasing the silence that cost them so much. It's about stopping the cycle of pain and beginning the cycle of healing. You are still becoming. I want you to hear this. Silence does not heal. Hurt that is never spoken and never felt. It stays buried, alive inside of us. Just remember, you don't need permission to feel what's been hidden. Your healing begins when you give your pain a voice. Let it go and be free. This is Butterfly, the becoming.